Namaste. Hello and welcome to the Kundalini podcast. That was Zen. This is Tao. I'm Vivek Govekar. This is episode 44. And today you can see my tree in my backyard is full of flowers. The other trees, they have leaves on them. So spring has arrived in full bloom. And today is actually the Indian festival of Holi. So happy Holi, everyone. And I got an interesting question in the comments today. I remember the very first episode that I taped was about Osho and why I listened to Osho. So a question I got today was about some of the things that Osho mentions and why he emphasizes certain things and not other things. So the person asked me this question, and it was, well, it seems as if Osho is a fan of the Buddha, but then there are many mantras used in the Buddhist system like Om Mani Padme Hum and others. So why is Osho skeptical of the use of mantras? So I put a comment and answered that question, but let me make a video about it. Osho is a very complicated topic to talk about, and it's an excellent point that someone brings up, because when you read Osho or when you listen to Osho, as I've mentioned in the first episode itself, you have to take it from a very different perspective and not just following something rigidly, just as he says. That's not the purpose. Remember, Osho himself was a Buddha, an enlightened person who had attained Buddhahood. Being a Buddha there was not just one Buddha. It is a consciousness, a Buddhahood. So several people after the first one, Gautama the Buddha, Siddhartha the prince, attained Buddhahood. Others attained to that same level. Similarly, remember that Jesus the Christ is a consciousness. So Jesus the Christ, and when you attain to that same level of Buddhahood, it is attaining Christ consciousness. So Osho was a person who himself had attained Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness. So his perspective, when he explains these books, these spiritual traditions to you, is from, and he says it himself, it's from the perspective of one Buddha talking about the works of another one, right? So whatever he talks about comes from the perspective of what needs to be conveyed to his audience, people living in the 20th century and people who are bound by certain traditions. So he's helping them break free of those traditions. In doing so, the way he explains those things, it's always with funny jokes, anecdotes, making fun of certain religious figures and traditions. And in doing that, he makes fun of things like mantras. But remember, it's not about the mantra itself. He's not against you reciting a mantra. It's about rigidity and following tradition blindly. If you listen to what he says and why he makes fun of different things, is not for the thing itself. It's about how it manifests in your life as your spiritual practice. In doing that, he makes fun of mantras. He makes fun of people that worship something blindly. And that has been my attempt as well, because once you awaken, I'm not at the same level as Osho, I'm awakened. He was constantly in samadhi at all times. I'm trying to get to that point. But once you awaken, you see two things. You see the truth behind every tradition and every philosophy. And the other thing you see is how people are blindly following something and going in the opposite direction of the intent of what was in those scriptures in the first place, right? So you see people, I have given an example of veganism. By being vegan, you're gonna get more energy for your Kundalini process, and it's gonna go smoothly. That's the purpose behind veganism. But you need balance, as I've mentioned in one of my episodes, so that all your chakras are not going out of balance. So for example, I mentioned the third chakra, Manipur, which is about power and ego, where you have to gain dominance of your surroundings, but not to an excess and not get carried away so that it becomes ego and that hurts you and becomes an imbalance and creates bad karma or creates an imbalance within your chakric system. Similarly, the initial intent of veganism or reciting a mantra may have been a certain thing, a certain intended outcome. But by following it rigidly and making it like, oh, you didn't follow a mantra or you are not a vegan, you're not only not getting the original intent of why that was being done, you're actually doing more damage. So when Osho speaks against something as a tradition, remember, he contradicts himself all the time. So in one series of lectures, he will talk deeply about the Vedas, the mantras in the Vedas, and in another series related to some other topic, he may make fun of those things. There are many contradictions in Osho, and I've said that in the first episode itself. Try to understand what he's trying to convey within that context, not in a general context and not in an absolute sense. He's trying to make you aware of your reality, inner reality within, which comes through meditation, which comes through breaking of bondage, breaking of barriers, and overcoming fears, overcoming your programmed behavior. So, if a mantra practice helps you break out of those things, then Osho is not against it, or I'm not against it, or anybody is not against it. Ultimately, a true guru, whether it's Osho, whether it's anybody else, is helping you find your own path. And that is not accomplished by just giving you the same things that you are used to. Sometimes that shaking you out of your comfort zone, that process, can be a little jarring, can be a little traumatic, but it helps you get on the track that you were supposed to and breaks you out of your repetitive patterns, out of your slumber. If by reciting a mantra or following certain traditions, that goal is achieved, that you are now breaking free of the past or where you were headed in an unawakened way, then mantras are useful. By all means, use them. But if you grew up reciting mantras and somebody told you, hey, if you stop doing this, then this is bad, just to scare you, just because they were told that following this tradition is something good and anybody going against this is bad, but no real knowledge of what it does spiritually, then it's blind leading the blind. You're going in a direction, not knowing why, and somebody else is enforcing that on you, like, oh, you have to. That kind of rigidity, those traditions followed for those reasons, just because you were told, and just because that's how it's done. Osho has been against all of those things. For a very good reason, is because nobody has ever awakened by just following along, by just taking the easy way out. Awakening happens when you are out of a certain pattern or attempting to get out of a certain pattern. And that method, that philosophy varies based on the person. What's going to appeal to me is not going to appeal to you exactly. How I follow a certain method is not going to work exactly the same for everyone else. So even I am very cautious. I'm not at the Osho level. So I'm very cautious in giving methods that emphasize that, hey, this is just a guideline, and try different things among those things that I have mentioned. I'm going to give you my experience. Not all of it will apply to you. Not all of it may be right in an absolute sense. Even I may change my opinions about certain things eventually. Right now, this makes sense to me. And most of what I have said has made sense for a few years since my awakening. But who knows, maybe in a few years, I might say, hey, listen, this thing that I said a few videos back, well, try it this way, and that works better. It won't be wrong, or it won't be completely like, oh, I've just messed this up completely. No, less likelihood that that would happen. I won't tell you something when if I think that there is any possibility it might be completely wrong or might cause problems for you. But the process of learning is such that you don't see the forest. You see a tree first. And then when you rise above, you see it as a forest. Right? In the same way, things that appeal to you right now, the reason they appeal to you is because that is your path. And then you're finding my videos, then you're looking for Osho or somebody else, reading other books. And slowly that path becomes clearer through practice, not just theoretical knowledge and reading books. A practice of meditation, of yoga, of breathing practices, and the right behavior, questioning your actions, correcting wrong behavior, stuff like that will reveal more things as you go on that road. It won't be clear right at the beginning. And be prepared to adapt, to change, to be flexible as and when needed based on the guidelines you have set for yourself. And your conscience will guide you. Your inner voice will guide you. And of course, people like Osho will guide you. And of course, my videos, I'm doing my best to help people. But none of this is going to be exact. And the whole point is for it not to be rigid. Okay? So, in your own case, if you think, no, you know what, using a mantra will help me, but listening to Osho on Zen also helps me. Even though Osho doesn't emphasize mantras, and he may have said something that is less flattering about people doing mantras, you can still use them if that helps you, and not say, hey, Osho is wrong. No, he might be helping you in other ways, in other aspects of your life. Like I said, the way I use Osho is I put on one of his discourses at a low volume at night before I go to bed. Sometimes when you're stressed out, even somebody who's awakened, who's had a busy day, may need some calming down before they go to bed, and the thoughts need to go. And your own thoughts, if you're left to your own devices, your own brain, creating chaos, may not be helpful to falling asleep faster. So having Osho in the background, he has that smooth, hypnotic delivery. So you're listening to him in a low volume. Your thoughts have stopped. You're just attentive to what he's saying. It gets you in that calm state, helps you sleep faster. And even as you're sleeping, subconsciously, his words are being recorded somewhere. They're registering somewhere and changing something inside you. You wake up in a calmer state than you would have without the discourse playing in the background. So that's my way of using it. You may use it in another way. Another example is, let's say you have had a stressful day. You come home and you put on an Osho discourse. And that goes on in the background for the first hour after you have come back from work. And then you go about doing other things. That may be your way of doing it. Okay? You may put on mantras in the morning to start your day. I do that. I use certain mantras, like I have said, Kavach, the armor, or Shiva Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Shiva, because there are 1,000 petals of the Sahasrara chakra. And each one of these names of any deity, Shiva, Vishnu, a goddess, helps activate those petals in a certain way, just by the resonance of that vibration, that mantra, that sound. So to me, because it makes sense, it is helpful, I use that. But I use Osho in a different way. And so can you. You don't have to be stuck in rigidity about which method to use and which guru contradicts what other guru. If it makes sense to you, use those contradictory methods. Ultimately, it has to make sense to you and get you to a higher place spiritually and a deeper place within your own self, revealing your own true self. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.